A racist insult slices through a packed courtroom as a powerful judge locks eyes with a defendant, his forgotten childhood friend. The prosecutor mocks their shared past by destroying an old photo. With the entire court watching, the judges. Calm words turn the tension upside down, hinting that everything about this trial is about to change. We don't let trash like you breathe the same air as decent people. The words slam into the marble walls of courtroom 12A like a bullet. Heads snap up. A row of elderly jurors shift in their seats, paper-thin hands trembling on their laps. On the far left bench, a woman clutches her purse tighter to her chest, as if the man on trial might leap out of his shackles and steal her pearls. Judge. Thomas Whitaker sits taller in his heavy leather chair, eyes locked on the man standing at the defense table. Marcus Hayes. To the rest of this courtroom, he's just another black man in an orange jumpsuit, a repeat offender. If the prosecutor's voice is to be believed, but Thomas sees more. He sees the thin, barefoot boy who used to throw rocks at streetlights just to watch the sparks dance. He sees the friend who once took a punch meant for him behind a liquor store. Sees every secret they buried when the neighborhood split itself down the middle. One side for the good white families, the other for the rest. Donald Kearns. The prosecutor adjusts his silk tie, relishing the silence he's created. His smirk is a slow poison. He lifts a faded photograph between two manicured fingers. It's bent at the edges, a crease running straight through the middle like a scar. "Recognize this, Your Honor?" he sneers, waving it for the gallery too. See? 2 boys. One destined for the bench, he flicks his eyes at Thomas, voice dripping with mock respect. And the other, destined for prison. A ripple of cheap laughter from the back rows. A guard near the door shifts uncomfortably. Marcus doesn't flinch. His wrists are cuffed tight, but his shoulders stay loose, his stare steady as rain. Thomas feels a tremor deep in his bones. The photo is a relic, a ghost dragged into this sterile chamber of wood and steel. He sees himself at 10, bowl haircut and knobby elbows, one arm flung carelessly around Marcus's narrow shoulders. No judge's robe back then, no law degree. Just 2 boys convinced they could outrun the world. Donald tosses the photo onto the defense table like trash. "Some dreams die hard, don't they?" he says. Then, slow as poison, he tears the picture clean down the center. One half drifts to the ground, landing at Marcus's feet. A collective breath. The reporter's fingers hover over her keys. A ceiling fan hums, an offbeat rattle above their heads. The sound fills the space between them like static. Thomas leans forward, robes creaking like old floorboards. He wants to look away but can't. His eyes lock on Marcus, and for a split second, the courtroom fades. No gavel, no bailiff, no jurors. Just him and Marcus behind that liquor store fence, trading secrets about how they'd both get out someday. Marcus bends slowly, picks up the torn piece. He doesn't look at Donald, doesn't curse him. He just folds the scrap carefully, pressing. The crease flat against his palm. His eyes flick up at Thomas, and there it is, the silent question that Thomas hasn't heard in 30 years. "Are you still my brother? Or are you just their judge now?" Donald clears his throat, smirk back in place. "Your Honor, the state requests the maximum sentence for repeat burglary, trespassing, and resisting arrest. This man is exactly where he belongs." The gavel sits beside Thomas's hand, heavy and cold. He doesn't touch it. His mouth is dry as paper. 100 pairs of eyes pin him to that bench, waiting to see which side of the line he'll stand on. He finds his voice buried beneath layers of polished authority. "Mr. Hayes," he says, voice low but steady, "do you have anything to say before I consider sentencing?" The prosecutor laughs. He has nothing. Nothing but that torn memory. Marcus lifts his chin. His cuffs clink as he holds up the folded piece of photo like a fragile relic. His words roll out soft but sharp enough to cut granite. "Your Honor, you once told me a promise means something, even when the world says it doesn't." Thomas's chest tightens. The back row leans in. Somewhere near the jury box, a young bailiff stops, pretending to look busy. Donald tries to speak again, but Thomas raises a single finger, and the room obeys. The prosecutor's grin twitches, falters. Marcus lowers the photo, voice calm as, "Sunday morning? I don't want mercy. I just want you to remember who taught you to fight back." Thomas exhales through his teeth. The robe on his shoulders feels like armor and chains. He shifts his gaze to Donald, whose arrogance now flickers into something else. Doubt. The gavel strikes wood. Once. Twice. This court. Thomas says, eyes still locked on Marcus, is not done hearing the truth. The gallery gasps. The fan rattles louder, like it knows a storm is coming. And in the front row, a reporter's pen finally scratches back to life, scribbling the first line of what no one here will ever forget. The heavy oak door of Judge Whitaker's chambers shuts behind him with a soft but final thud, sealing off the buzzing courtroom like a lid on a boiling pot. He leans back against the door for a moment, robe pooled around him like a shroud. The portraits of past judges glared down from the dark-paneled walls, pale faces, powdered wigs, unsmiling eyes. None of them would approve of what just happened. Out there, a single lamp flickers to life on his mahogany desk, throwing pale light across stacks of motions and half-finished rulings. Thomas loosens his collar, but the air in here feels just as tight as the courtroom. He closes his eyes. For a moment, the smell of floor polish fades, replaced by the ghost scent of summer grass and cheap bubblegum, the summer he and Marcus spent swearing they'd never be like their fathers. He sees Marcus. 12 years. Old, perched on the hood of an abandoned Buick, teaching Thomas how to roll a baseball across his knuckles. Keep your hand loose. Don't force it. Trust your fingers. They'd practiced until dusk chased them home on opposite sides of the railroad tracks. Back then, skin color was an enemy too big to fight, but promises felt bigger than fear. A knock breaks the memory. Thomas opens his eyes to see Donald Kearns standing in the doorway. No knock, no respect, just his thin lips curled in a lawyer's fake grin. "Mind if I come in?" Donald asks, not waiting for permission. He steps inside, the scent of stale cologne trailing behind him. Thomas doesn't sit. "What do you want, Kearns?" Donald shrugs, letting the door swing shut. He circles the chamber like a snake in a terrarium. His eyes skim the bookshelves lined with dusty legal tomes and family photos Thomas's daughters at college graduations. His late wife smiling in a frame so clean it gleams in the lamp's glow. "I just wanted to offer some friendly advice," Donald says, drawing out every word like a threat hidden in silk. "This man, Marcus Hayes, he's going to drag you down with him. He's not worth your robe." Thomas watches him but says nothing. He knows the game. Silence makes the arrogant speak more than they mean to. Donald perches on the arm of a leather chair, crossing his legs like he owns the place. "I did a little digging. It didn't take long. Newspaper archives. Old school. Records a few old-timers on the block who remember the two of you sneaking around. You think you can pass judgment on this scum without people wondering whose side you're really on?" Thomas's fists clench, hidden in the folds of his robe. He can almost feel that torn photo burning a hole in his chest pocket. "Is that a threat, counselor?" Donald laughs, sharp and brittle. "A reminder. Your reputation is a pillar of this courthouse. If word gets out that you and this thief were practically brothers, well, who's to say you didn't help him all these years? It's to say, this trial isn't just a show. The room feels smaller. The eyes of those old painted judges seem closer, disapproving." Thomas crosses to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to see the streetlights flickering on outside downtowns, shadows stretching long over cracked sidewalks. He turns back. "I've never broken this bench, Donald. And I'm not about to start now." Donald stands, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeve. "No, but he will. He's going to stand there tomorrow and drag you into his sob story. You'll either destroy him, your old friend, or destroy yourself trying to save him." He steps closer, voice low and oily. "Do yourself a favor, Tom. Sentence him fast. Hard. Make him disappear, and this little reunion never sees daylight." Thomas's jaw tightens. "Is that what you'd do?" Donald flashes his teeth, the kind of smile that never touches. The eyes. It's what a judge does when he cares more about his robe than an old promise. He turns for the door, but pauses with his hand on the knob. "Tomorrow, You'll see. He'll beg for your pity, and you'll have to choose whether you're a friend or a judge. The door swings open, spilling fluorescent hallway light into the dark chamber. For a moment, Thomas catches his reflection in the glass pane, the robe, the tired eyes, the weight of power balanced on fragile bones. When Donald leaves, Thomas crosses to his desk, opens the bottom drawer, and pulls out a battered old file. One he'd buried under decades of promotions and sealed records. He flips it open. Inside, a police report, 2 boys' names, a single charge that vanished like it never happened. One name got expunged. One life moved on. He runs a finger over Marcus's name, ink faded, but not gone. A quiet whisper escapes his lips. Half prayer, half curse. What did I owe you, Marcus? And what do I owe you now? Outside, thunder rumbles far away, a promise that, tomorrow, the storm will come inside. The cell door clanks shut behind Marcus with a sound that's felt, not just heard. Steel meeting steel. The promise of no exit echoing in the hollow space. The cot is thin, the walls stained with decades of other men's regrets. Marcus lowers himself onto the mattress, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on the tiny barred window that shows him nothing but a slice of moon and the glow of the yard lights. He rubs his thumb over the folded half of the photo, hidden in his sock. The guards didn't see him slip it in small mercy. Presses the paper against his palm, feeling the rough edges dig into his skin like a reminder he's still here, still flesh and bone, not just another inmate number stamped on a file. Mind drifts not to the trial, not to the charges stacked against him like bricks, but to the tracks behind the old freight yard where he and Thomas met the first time. Summer of '78, Marcus can still taste the dusty sweetness of stale licorice. They'd stolen from Mr. Klein's corner store. He'd hidden behind the rusted train cars, cheeks sticky, when Thomas appeared, a soft-bellied white kid in corduroy. Short's eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" Marcus had asked, ready to bolt. Thomas didn't answer. He just held out a half-melted chocolate bar, offering it like a peace treaty between 2 tribes. It sat on a busted rail tie, knees knocking together, swapping candy and lies. About who they'd be when they got out of that dead-end town? Marcus had promised he'd be rich. A ball player, or a singer, or something bigger than any fence they could climb. Thomas had promised to run with him, to stand beside him, to fight off anyone who said they weren't the same. Marcus snorts at the memory, soft bitterness curling in his throat. It didn't last long. The first time a group of white boys caught them together, Thomas had frozen. Words lodged behind teeth that stayed shut when Marcus took the beating alone. The bruise on his cheekbone faded in a week, but the echo of Thomas's silence never did. He leans back, eyes closing against the sting of memory. Some scars don't need skin to live on, he thinks. The cell block hums with the night-distant coughs, a muffled curse, the slow, measured footsteps of a guard making his rounds. Marcus shifts, pulling his knees up to his chest like he used. 2. When the nights got too cold in that 2-room shack he called home, he wonders what Thomas is doing right now. If he's pacing his big wooden chambers, hands trembling over that robe, if he's replaying that same day at the tracks, if he remembers the promise he made with sticky fingers and chocolate on his chin, a soft rustle outside his bars snaps him back. Another inmate, a broad-shouldered man with dreadlocks pulled tight, leans against the bars of the next cell. "Yo, Hayes, you good, man?" the man asks, voice low enough not to rattle the guards. Marcus lifts his head. "Good as anybody boxed up in here," the man Kenny chuckles, hollow and tired. "Heard you got history with the judge. That true?" Marcus shifts, not answering right away. He looks down at the photo scrap pressed against his knee. The face of a boy who doesn't exist anymore. "Yeah," Marcus says finally, voice dry. As the concrete floor, we were kids. Shared candy, dreams, nothing that matters now. Kenny whistles under his breath. "Matters if he remembers, man. Matters if he don't." Marcus lets out a soft laugh that dies quick. He'll remember. What's convenient? He always did. Silence settles between the cells. Somewhere down the row, someone hums a broken tune, an old gospel song that drifts through the steel bars like smoke. Kenny clears his throat. You think he'll help you? Marcus closes his eyes, sees the courtroom again. The robe, the gavel, the weight of years pressing down on Thomas's shoulders. I don't know, Marcus admits, a whisper only the walls can hear. I just hope the boy I knew didn't drown under that damn robe. He leans back against the wall, the concrete cold against his spine. The moon shifts outside, sliding behind a cloud, taking its thin light with it. The hum of the jail at night seeps back in, soft, restless, like a warning that sleep won't come easy. Marcus slides the photo scrap under his pillow, folding himself around what little piece of the past he has left. He whispers a name he hasn't spoken in decades, Tommy. The name only boys on the wrong side of the tracks were allowed to say. Outside, guards' footsteps fade away, leaving Marcus alone with the truth that tomorrow could break both. Their promises for good. The rain comes down in steady sheets, tapping on the courthouse windows like impatient fingers. Judge Thomas Whitaker stands in the hallway just outside courtroom 1 to a shoulders squared but heart hammering like a snare drum in his chest. His reflection stares back at him from the dark glass, the black robe hiding the man beneath. Just as it always has, he wipes a bead of sweat from his temple. The rain should have washed this heaviness away, but instead it feels like it's leaking through the ceiling, dripping onto his conscience drop by drop. Inside, the courtroom is all ready. Humming, jurors gathering, reporters whispering, the bailiff rehearsing his stern expression in the hall mirror. Thomas breathes deep, trying to remember the boy on the rail tracks, trying to remember promises made with candy-sticky hands, trying not to remember how easily he'd buried them. Morning, Judge. The voice comes soft, edged with weariness. It's Ruthie, the old court clerk, older than the courthouse itself, hair pinned up so tight it looks like silver wire. She stands behind him, a stack of folders hugged to her chest. Morning, Ruthie, Thomas murmurs, forcing a polite smile. He tries to step past her, but she touches his elbow, a rare breach of protocol that freezes him in place. You got a minute? She asks, eyes darting to make sure no one's close enough to overhear. Thomas nods, letting her pull him into the shadow of the hallway's marble column. The hum of courtroom chatter fades just enough for her whisper to settle in. His ear. Tom, they're watching you. Thomas's brow furrows. Who's watching? Ruthie's eyes flick to the courtroom door. The higher-ups, the DA's office, the judge's counsel. Words traveling fast. They're saying you're compromised, that you're too close to this defendant to be fair. He feels a cold knot twist in his gut. He shouldn't be surprised. The city's gossip lines run faster than the rain down these windows. Still, hearing it out loud feels like someone just carved the truth onto his skin. I haven't done anything yet, Thomas says. It sounds feeble, even to him. Ruthie shakes her head, voice soft but sharp. Doesn't matter. Perception is poison, Tom. One wrong move, they'll bury you alongside him. She presses the folders into his hands, motions for the day, rulings. Waiting for his signature, everyday paperwork that suddenly feels heavier than stone. You be careful, she says. Sometimes the robe ain't enough to protect you. He nods, clutching the stack to his chest like a shield. Ruthie slips away, swallowed by the slow-moving tide of lawyers and jurors flowing into the chamber. Thomas looks at the door. Courtroom 12A, his kingdom and his cage. He can almost hear Donald's slick voice echoing in his head. Sentence him. Make him disappear, he exhales, squares his shoulders, and pushes the door open. Inside, Marcus sits alone at the defense table, hands folded, chin lifted just enough to hide the worry deep in his eyes. Beside him, a young public defender, Dana Fields, flips through a battered legal pad, her expression half worry, half frustration. She leans in close, voice low but urgent. Marcus, I'm telling you, this is the best you're going to get. You plead to burglary, they drop the assault. Maybe 10 years with parole? Marcus lets out a dry chuckle that draws a glare. From Donald at the prosecutor's table. 10 years? For something I didn't do? That's the best? Dana lowers her voice even further. You think you'll get better from that bench? He can't save you, Marcus. Not if he wants to keep that robe. Marcus meets her eyes. Then maybe he shouldn't keep it. Dana sits back, exasperated. She's too young to be this tired, but her eyes already carry the bruises of too many lost battles. If you won't fight for yourself, why should I? Marcus doesn't answer. He shifts his eyes to the judge's bench where Thomas now sits. Arranging his papers like they might hide the tremor in his hands, their eyes meet, a flicker, a question. Neither man blinks. The bailiff calls the court to order. The jurors shuffle into their seats. Rain taps on the windows behind the bench, steady as a ticking clock. Thomas lifts his gavel, feels its weight, the promise of finality it carries. Court is now in session, he says. His voice echoes through the silent chamber, bouncing off. The polished wood like a challenge hurled at the ghosts of every promise he ever broke. In the back row, Ruthie slips in quietly, her eyes finding his for a heartbeat, a silent reminder. Be careful. Thomas looks at Marcus. Marcus looks back. Somewhere between them, that abandoned rail track still hums with the sound of a train that never came, the escape they promised each other. Waiting to be reclaimed or buried for good, Donald Kearns rises from his chair like a vulture sensing blood. He adjusts his gold cufflinks, smooths his already perfect hair, and gives the jury a smile so oily it could slick the whole courthouse floor. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, pacing slowly before the witness box, like a predator circling. Its prey, the man you see before you, is not some poor misunderstood soul who took a wrong turn. He is a man who has spent his entire life taking what he wants. He gestures dramatically at Marcus, who sits stiff and silent, his eyes locked. Dead ahead at the judge's bench at Thomas. Donald flicks through a folder, pulling out sheet after sheet, waving them like trophies. Burglary in '98, petty theft in 2001, trespassing, resisting arrest, the list goes on. And now, assaulting an officer during an attempted break-in. He's not just unlucky, ladies and gentlemen. He's exactly where he belongs. He pauses, savoring the hush. Then he snaps his eyes back to Marcus. Mr. Hayes, tell this court what were you doing at Mrs. Duffy's store at 2 a.m? Marcus leans into the mic, voice calm but cold. I was buying milk. A snicker ripples through the courtroom. Donald pounces on it. Buying milk? He spreads his arms, letting the jury drink in the absurdity. At 2 a.m? In a store? Closed for renovations? I didn't know it was closed, Marcus says evenly. Donald steps closer, boots echoing off the marble floor. So you accidentally broke the lock. Marcus's jaw tightens. Thomas feels the weight of that old promise between them pressing into his chest like a stone. Donald leans on the witness stand, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial hush. Is it true, Mr. Hayes, that you and Judge Whitaker were close? Grew up together? A murmur ripples through the jury box. Thomas's gavel strikes once, sharp as a gunshot. Counselor, stick to the charges. Donald turns, all feigned innocence. It's clarifying context. Your Honor, surely the jury has a right to know if there's a history here. He turns back to Marcus before Thomas can object again. Tell us, Mr. Hayes, is this whole trial just an old favor being cashed in? A pity party for the judge's childhood friend? Marcus shifts, but his eyes flick up to Thomas's for the briefest second. A flash of the boy who trusted him, then he looks back at Donald. The only pity here is you standing there pretending you know a damn thing about loyalty. A soft gasp from the jury box. Donald's grin twitches, his arrogance flaring back fast. He waves the old torn photo in front of Marcus's face, the one he shredded days ago. Explain this, Donald demands. What is it, blackmail? Remorse? Did you think this picture would buy you freedom? Marcus's voice drops too. Quiet rumble that still somehow fills every corner of the room. It's not about buying anything. It's about reminding people what they owe. Donald scoffs. So, the judge owes you something? Good to know. He spins on his heel to face the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it straight from the accused. This man expects favors, expects his past to excuse his crimes. If I'm expects this court, this system to bend for him. Thomas grips the edge of his bench so hard his knuckles go white. He opens his mouth to strike the line of questioning, but the words snag behind his teeth. He sees Marcus's hands, knuckles raw from decades of fighting a world that never once fought fair. Donald circles back. One last question, Mr. Hayes. Do you deny the assault? You deny resisting arrest? Marcus's eyes lock on Donald's. His shoulders square like a prize fighter refusing to fall. I deny trying to hurt anyone. I deny that I broke that lock. But I don't deny standing my ground when a cop threw me on the ground for no reason. Donald's grin is a blade. He turns to Thomas, voice like poisoned honey. Your Honor, I rest my case. This man is a career criminal who thinks friendship excuses lawbreaking. It is the duty of this court to remind him and the people watching that it does not. He saunters back to his seat, flicking his papers onto the table like a gambler tossing away a winning hand. The jury scribbles notes, heads bent low. The gallery buzzes, whispering. Leaning forward like spectators at a prize fight, Thomas tries to breathe. But the robe feels too tight, the bench too small for the weight pressing on his shoulders. His gavel hangs in the air for a heartbeat before falling with a dull thud. Court will recess for lunch, he says, voice cracking just enough for Donald's smirk to grow a fraction wider as the courtroom empties. Thomas stays seated, eyes fixed on Marcus, who doesn't look away. Between them, the air is thick with unspoken truths, and the promise that this fight is about to burn through every wall they thought could contain it. The courtroom has emptied like a drained well, echoes of shuffling feet and murmured gossip still clinging to the wood-paneled walls. Judge Thomas Whitaker sits behind his wide oak desk, the stained glass window behind him fractured by the harsh afternoon sun. His lunch, a cold ham sandwich wrapped in wax paper, sits untouched. He can't taste food with the sour taste of Donald Kearns's voice lingering like poison at the back of his throat. He flips through old court dockets, not reading a single line. He hears the door creak and doesn't bother looking. Up, he knows who it is, before the polished shoes hit the marble. Donald slips in, closing the chamber door with the soft, careful hush of a man used to secrets. You look tired, Tom? Donald says, settling himself into the leather chair across from the judge's desk without waiting for an invitation. Thomas doesn't look up. State your business, counselor. Donald crosses his legs, inspects a speck of lint on his designer. Trousers. I'm here to help you, Tom. To help this courthouse. What? Thomas sets the folder down, fixing his eyes on Donald. Go on. Donald spreads his hands, the gesture too wide, too smooth. Nobody wants to see you dragged through the mud over a petty criminal. It's Marcus Hayes. He's bait. Tom, bait for gossip, scandal. The press loves a good story about a righteous judge in his secret past. He leans in, lowering his voice. But that story doesn't have to ruin you. Not if you make it disappear. Thomas's stomach twists. You're suggesting I bury the trial. Donald shrugs. Not bury. Wrap it up. Give him the maximum. Make an example. Prove to the city that the law is bigger than any old playground promise. Thomas pushes back in his chair, the leather squeaking under his shoulders. Dot, 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 dot. You'd have me destroy a man to protect my robe. Donald's grin flickers, wolfish and sure. He destroyed himself, Tom. You're just signing the paperwork. He rises, straightening his tie, brushing imaginary dust from his cuff. Or you can let this circus drag on. Let reporters find old neighbors. Let them dig through every rumor about you and your friend. Let them ask questions about your father, about that night behind the liquor store. How long before someone wonders why his record vanished and yours never touched a file? Thomas feels that old memory clawing at the back of his mind. Marcus's split lip. The taste of iron in the summer heat. The promise he made to fix it all if he ever got the chance. Donald pats the edge of the desk with 2 lazy taps. You're a good man, Tom. This courthouse needs good men. Don't throw it away for a thief who never figured out how to stay out of the gutter. Turns for the door, leaving behind the smell of stale cologne and fear. Just before stepping out, he looks back over his shoulder, voice soft, final. Sentencing resumes at 2. Make the right call. When the door clicks shut, Thomas drops his head into his hands. The robe around his shoulders feels like a straitjacket. Somewhere beneath the black fabric, the boy Marcus knew is screaming for air. 2 floors down, Marcus sits in a cramped conference room, chains clinking against the metal chair bolted to the floor. Dana Fields, his public defender, stands at the far end of the table, arms crossed tight against her chest like she's trying to hold herself together. She pushes a yellow legal pad across the table. Sign it, Marcus. 10 years? Maybe less with good behavior? At least you'll see daylight before you're an old man. Marcus snorts, pushing the pad back with his cuffed hand. 10 years for stealing milk. Dana's eyes flare. Don't. Do that. Don't play martyr with me. You know how this goes? Once they slap assaulting an officer on you, it sticks like glue. She kneels beside him, voice dropping to a hush that trembles. I've seen it too many times. You'll lose. You'll get 20, 25, you'll die in there, Marcus. He studies her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the half shake in her hands as she tries to push the pen into his palm. He remembers when he was a kid, watching his mother sign away their house to pay off a debt she didn't owe. He remembers how paper and ink felt heavier than fists. I'm not signing, says softly. Dana slams her hand on the table, startling the guard outside the glass panel door. Why? What's left to prove? He won't save you. Marcus lifts, his chin, voice calm, steady as it was in the dock. It's not about him saving me. It's about him remembering who he promised to be. Dana's eyes shine with the shimmer of tears she won't let fall. Promises don't mean a damn thing. In this building, Marcus leans back, chain rattling, a ghost of a smile on his lips. Then maybe it's time someone reminded them. Dana stands, shoving the pad and pen into her bag. God help you, Marcus, 'cause nobody else will. She raps on the glass. The guard swings the door open, a metallic squeal echoing off the sterile walls. Marcus stays seated for a moment, staring at the pen she left behind, cheap plastic, government-issued. He slides it into his pocket next to the folded half of the photo. 2 relics of who he used to be. 2 reminders that even buried, promises can claw their way back into the light. The courtroom hums like a hive when the bailiff announces, "All rise." The jurors file in, eyes wary, notebooks ready. Thomas sits taller behind the bench, trying to hide how his heart pounds like a hammer in his chest. He watches Marcus stand at the defense table, shoulders squared, chin lifted, the chain on his wrist clinking softly as Dana leans close to whisper, "You don't have to do this." Marcus doesn't answer her. Instead, he turns to Thomas, eyes locked dead on the man behind the gavel. "Your Honor," Marcus says, voice low, but carrying through the room, "I'd like to testify." A rustle rolls through the gallery. Reporters lean forward, pens poised. Donald Kearns's head snaps up, surprise flickering before his grin. Slithers back into place. Thomas clears his throat. "Mr. Hayes, you understand. You're not required to testify on your own behalf." "I understand," Marcus says. His voice is calm, but something burns behind it. The same spark Thomas remembers from those rail tracks. The boy who refused to run. Donald rises, fake sympathy dripping from his every word. "Your Honor, I object. This is a waste of time, and will only serve to paint my client, the state, as unfair." Thomas doesn't blink. "Overruled. Mr. Hayes may proceed." The bailiff swears Marcus in. the Bible's cracked leather cover barely brushing his fingertips before he folds his hands in his lap. Donald steps forward, eyes gleaming like a wolf that smells fresh blood. "Well then, Mr. Hayes, tell the court. Why were you inside Mrs. Duffy's shop at 2 a.m. with a crowbar?" Marcus leans into the mic, unfazed. "I didn't have a crowbar." Donald raises an eyebrow, flipping through his papers. "So the responding officer's statement is a lie?" Marcus's gaze flicks to the jury, then to Thomas, then back to Donald. "I walked past that shop every night on my way home. I saw. The back door cracked open. I pushed it. Alarm went off. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground with a knee in my back." Donald's smile sharpens. "A likely story for a man with a record like yours." Marcus doesn't flinch. "My record doesn't change the truth." Donald spreads his hands. "Tell the jury then. Why should they believe you over a decorated officer?" Marcus's voice cuts through the stale courtroom air like a blade. "Because that decorated officer called me boy while he put his boot on my neck. Because that decorated officer wrote down what you wanted him to write. Because that decorated officer never expected me to stand here and say it out loud." A hush sweeps the room. The words bounce off the walls, heavy as thunder. Donald recovers with a sneer. "And we're just supposed to trust your word? Man who spent half his life behind bars?" Marcus leans forward, eyes drilling into the jury. "You don't have to trust me. Look at how fast they want me gone. Look at how they'd rather bury a man than ask why the same street never changed for some of us." He shifts his stare to Thomas, locking him in place like a spotlight pinning a moth. "Ask the judge. He knows." A ripple runs through the room. Thomas's fingers twitch over the gavel. "Mr. Hayes, keep your answers to the questions." But Marcus doesn't stop. "Tell them, Your Honor. Tell them how many nights you walked. Those same tracks. Tell them whose father paid whose bail the first time the cops came looking for trouble." Donald pounds the table, voice rising. "Your Honor." Witnesses testifying off topic. Thomas slams the gavel. "Mr. Hayes, that's enough." But Marcus's voice only grows steadier, iron wrapped in velvet. "Tell them how a boy in the right skin walks away clean, and the one in the wrong skin keeps paying forever." Donald paces, pretending to fix his tie, but his eyes flick to the jury, gauging the damage. Turns back, snapping. "So it's the judge's fault you're here." Marcus's lips curl into a sad, small smile. "No, it's my fault for thinking a promise meant forever." Thomas's throat tightens. The room feels too hot, the robe clinging like wet cloth. He wants to bang the gavel again, shout order. The word lodges behind his teeth. Donald leans in for the kill. "Last question, Mr. Hayes. If you didn't do it, who did?" Marcus's eyes don't waver. He looks at Thomas like he's searching for that boy under the robe, the one who shared stolen candy and dreamed of escape. Then he says quietly, "The system did, and you helped it." The jury sits stone still, pens frozen mid. Even the ceiling fan seems to stop its lazy spin. Thomas lowers his eyes to the bench. Somewhere under the polished wood, the truth pounds like a trapped heartbeat, demanding to be heard. Outside the courthouse, rain mixes with the flash of camera bulbs like fireflies caught in a storm. Reporters stand shoulder to shoulder behind barricades, shouting questions at anyone in a suit who dares to push through the swarm. Inside, Thomas watches the chaos from the window of his chambers, the glass cold against his palm. Below him, a sea of umbrellas moves like dark waves. The headline crawls across his office TV. "Childhood ties between judge and defendant. Integrity at risk." The words burrow into his chest like termites. He flips the TV off, but the echo of that headline hums in his skull. A knock rattles the door. Thomas doesn't answer right away. He already knows who it is. Ruthie's soft tap wouldn't shake the frame like this. Donald slides in before he's invited. Dripping rain on the polished floor. His hair is damp, his grin dry as ever. He drops a folded newspaper onto Thomas's desk like tossing meat to a starving dog. Judge's secret history exposed screams from the front page. Below it, a grainy scan of that torn photo. Two boys on a rusted rail track. Arms slung over each other's shoulders like brothers. Thomas sinks into his chair, the robe pooling like black water around his knees. Where'd they get it? he asks, voice barely above a whisper. Donald shrugs. These days, phones, inboxes, money, who knows, but it's out now. The question is, what do you do about it? Thomas lifts his eyes, tired blue turned to dull steel. What do you want? Me too. Donald leans against the window ledge, rain tapping behind his shoulder like mocking applause. Same thing I told you last time. End this. Send him away. You can walk out that door tomorrow with your reputation bruised but alive, or you can sit there and watch them dig up every piece of dirt you ever buried. Thomas stands. For a second, Donald looks almost surprised at how tall he still is under the weight of that robe. You think you own this bench, Donald? Thomas asks, voice steady for the first time in days. Donald's grin flickers, then snaps, back into place like a mask. I don't own it. I protect it. You think the council cares about truth? They care about order. And right now, you are chaos. A sharp rap cuts through the tension. Ruthie steps in, her usual calm shredded by worry. Judge, they're waiting, she says softly. The council wants a word before the next session. Thomas nods once. Donald claps him on the shoulder. A too-friendly gesture that feels like a chain. Be smart, Tom, Donald murmurs. Be who they pay you to be. Downstairs in the holding cell, Marcus sits on the cold bench, arms folded. The echo of the gavel still vibrating in his bones. The cell door slides open with a reluctant groan. A young man steps in, mid-30s, neat suit, wire-rimmed glasses that fog up instantly in the damp air. He carries a battered leather satchel and a press badge that swings from his neck. Mr. Hayes, he says carefully. Marcus lifts his head, eyes narrowing. You a lawyer? The man laughs once, awkward. No, sir. Name's Wilharo Tribune. Marcus shifts his feet to the floor, boots scraping metal. Press, I got nothing to say. Will holds up a hand. I don't want a statement. I want to offer you a chance to control the story. Marcus lets out a dry chuckle. Control. You people twist more than the DA. Will perches on the far bench, the cell door still wide behind him. Listen, this thing between you and Whitaker, it's blowing up. Half the city thinks you're a con artist playing him for mercy. The other half thinks you're the truth nobody wants to hear. Marcus leans forward, chain clinking. Which half are you? Will pushes his glasses up, sweat dotting his brow. Despite the cold, I'm the half that wants to print what you want them to hear. You give me your side, not just courtroom drama. The real story, who you were, who he was. Marcus's laugh is softer now, almost sad. You think words. On a page, change anything. I'll still be in cuffs tomorrow. Will shrugs. Maybe. But you put it out there. People talk. Judges tremble. DAs scramble. Truth has teeth when you hand it a microphone. Marcus studies him, this kid with trembling hands and a stubborn glint in his eye. Looks like Thomas used to, before the robe. Before the secrets. What's in it for you? Marcus asks. Will's smile is small but real. My byline, and maybe. A world that flinches before it stomps the next. Marcus Hayes. Marcus leans back, a ghost of defiance flickering behind tired eyes. Fine, you want a story? Bring paper tomorrow, and bring thick skin because this one cuts deep. Outside the bars, the guard watches, silent, unreadable. The city hums beyond the concrete cameras waiting, headlines sharpening like knives. The private chamber is colder than the courtroom, colder than any cell Marcus has ever known. Thomas stands at the far end of a polished mahogany table, facing 4 black-robed figures who look like they were carved from stone. The council's led. Judge Harrington leans forward, tapping a silver pen on a stack of printed headlines. Childhood friendship tangles justice. Judge Whitaker compromised. Do you deny this history? Harrington asks, voice flat. Thomas doesn't flinch. No. Do you deny your failure to disclose it when this trial was assigned to your docket? Thomas folds his hands behind his back, staring straight into Harrington's cold eyes. No. A second council member, Judge Patel, sighs, frustration leaking through a thin veneer of civility. Then you know what must happen? For the integrity of this bench, for the institution, you must step aside. Thomas's throat tightens. Recuse myself. Hand it to another judge, one who'll rubber stamp the prosecution's deal. Bury the mess and sweep him into a cell for 20 years. Patel narrows her eyes. This is not about him, this is about this court. Thomas leans forward, palms flat on the table. This is the court, the people in the dock. The ones who believe this robe means something. More than clean floors and covered secrets. Harrington snorts. Don't lecture us on virtue, Thomas. The press already owns your narrative. You can't salvage this, but you can protect what little reputation remains. Thomas's voice is low, ragged from nights without sleep. No. You want me to step aside because you're afraid I might listen? You're afraid I might let him speak? Watches Harrington's nostrils flare, a bull scenting a threat. Silence blooms in the chamber like poison ivy winding around marble pillars. Finally, Patel closes the folder with a decisive snap. If you continue, Thomas, you do so without this council's shield. If you sink, you do it alone. Thomas's pulse hammers in his ears. Alone. The word tastes familiar, the taste of rain on rusted rail tracks. When Marcus handed him half a candy bar and called him Tommy like he was more than the badge his father pinned on his chest. I understand, Thomas says. Harrington rises first, robes swishing like funeral drapes. Patel follows. Offer no words, just cold nods as they vanish through the side door, leaving Thomas in the hush of a room that smells like old secrets. He breathes out once, steadying himself. The next blow won't be theirs. It'll be his to deliver or protect. He picks up the gavel from the conference table, not his, but the same weight, and tests its balance in his palm. Down in the bowels of the courthouse, Marcus sits. On his bunk, the dull yellow light buzzing overhead like a dying fly. The pen Will gave him sits on the floor next to a scrap of legal pad paper. One half holds words, names, half-finished thoughts. The other half is blank. He can still hear his mother's voice echoing in the cracks of the cinder block walls. Tell the truth, Marcus, even when it costs you. He wonders what truth has cost him already. Years stolen. Promises cracked under boots, bones that never healed right. His eyes drift to the ceiling, paint peeling like old scabs. In his mind, he's back on the tracks, 12 years old, knees scraped, Thomas beside him whispering, I'll run with you. Nobody'll touch you if I'm here. Marcus rubs his thumb over the pen's cracked clip. Nobody'll touch you, except they did. Over and over. Cops, judges, guards with too tight cuffs. And now that boy stands behind the bench, hammer in hand, the same boy who once swore they'd run. A soft knock breaks the memory. Dana slips in, her tired eyes wide as she sits on the edge of the bunk. She doesn't speak for a moment, just pulls a folded sheet from her coat pocket and presses it into his palm. He unfolds it. A copy of the front page. The photo, the headlines. His life spilled for strangers to read between half-truths and speculation. You did this? Asks. Dana shakes her head. No, but you started it when you didn't fold. Marcus smirks. Doesn't feel like winning. It's not winning, she says. It's fighting. Sometimes that's all you get. She reaches into her pocket, pulls out a small black band, elastic, frayed. She presses it into his hand, too. What's this? Marcus asks. Something? You left behind, Dana says. When you first came to my office, said you didn't want your hair tied up anymore, said you were done being neat for other people. Marcus rolls the band between his fingers, a loop, no beginning, no end. Like promises, like tracks, he slips it around his wrist. You think he'll do it? He asks. Dana's eyes glimmer. I think he wants to. That's more than most. Marcus lifts the pen. He looks at the paper. Then he begins to write. Not a confession, not a plea, but a name. A truth. A promise for whoever's left to carry it when the door swings open. Courthouse buzzes like a disturbed hornet's nest. Reporters line the marble steps, microphones jabbed at every official who dares to pass. Inside, the courtroom is suffocating, the weight of eyes, the heat of lights, the smell of fear, dressed as order. Thomas sits at the bench. Black robe, a loose shroud around his shoulders, watches the jurors file in, sees their eyes flick. To him, then to Marcus, a man in second-hand clothes and prison-issue shoes. Sitting upright like a king without a throne, Donald Kearns sits too, hands folded neatly, a shark waiting for blood in the water. Dana leans close to Marcus, whispering, something only he hears. He doesn't respond. His eyes are locked on Thomas. The bailiff calls the court to order. The gavel feels heavy in Thomas's hand, heavier than the first time he held it. Back when he thought the robe would wash him clean, he clears his throat. The courtroom hushes. Even the ceiling fans seem to freeze. The jury will present its verdict. A young woman, jury foreperson, stands, paper trembling in her grip. She clears her throat once, twice, her voice small but sure. We, the jury, find the defendant, Marcus Hayes, not guilty of breaking and entering, and not guilty of assaulting an officer. A ripple, then a roar, gasps, a shout in the back. Cameras click like machine gun fire. Dana's eyes flash. Wide, relief breaking like dawn across her face. Donald stiffens, mouth twitching as if chewing a sour seed. He tries to stand, to object, but the law has spoken. His voice holds no more weight. Marcus doesn't flinch. No smile, no celebration. Just a long, slow breath that sinks into his chest like a stone dropping through deep water. Thomas lifts the gavel again. But before he can strike it, Marcus rises. The chain at his ankle clinks a soft final echo. Mr. Hayes, Thomas says, voice trembling at the edges, you are free to go. A hush falls over the room again, a stunned, disbelieving silence. Marcus turns to the jury, then to Dana. He gives her a nod, small, but enough. He looks back at Thomas, eyes boring into him with something like forgiveness and something like warning. Dana gathers the papers, her hand shaking. The bailiff unlocks Marcus's ankle shackle. Metallic snap loud as thunder. Outside the gallery, reporters shout, wave, shove microphones toward the aisle. Dana blocks them with her body, shielding Marcus like a wall, but Marcus stops at the defense table, leaning on the wood with both hands. He raises his voice not loud, but sharp enough to cut the courtroom chatter. Your Honor, he says, and the words hush every throat in the gallery. Thomas meets his eyes not as judge and defendant, but as boys on a track that never led home. Marcus's voice doesn't tremble. This don't fix it. You know that, right? Thomas nods, his throat dry as dust. I know. Marcus holds up the pen Dana gave him back. You should tell them, Tom, the whole truth. Before someone else does. A camera flash pops like lightning. Thomas grips the bench, the wood warm beneath his fingertips. For the first time in decades, he feels the robe slip from his shoulders, not physically, but in the part of him that once hid behind it. He raises the gavel, strikes it once. The echo rings like a funeral bell and a promise all at once. Court is adjourned. Outside, rain batters the marble steps. Marcus stands under the gray sky, the pen in his pocket, the photo folded next to it. Dana beside him? Will the reporter somewhere in the swarm? Notebook clutched like a shield. A cop tries to guide Marcus through the press. Marcus shakes him off. He walks himself out. No chain to drag. No plea to sign. Reporters shout questions. What will you do now? What's next? Are you free? Marcus doesn't answer. He steps into the rain. Lets it soak his shirt, his hair, the old scar above his eyebrow. Each drop feels like a baptism, cold and real and unforgiving. Behind him, Dana's voice cracks through the thunder of questions. Where will you go? Marcus glances at her, then at the courthouse, the stone monument where promises were broken and mended in the same breath. Anywhere the tracks still run. He says. He touches the elastic band at his wrist, then the folded paper in his pocket. Somebody's got to keep telling it, he adds. Might as well be me. He steps off the curb, disappearing into the downpour. A free man under gray skies, carrying a promise nobody can chain again. Behind him, on the bench inside, Thomas sits alone as the marble walls echo with whispers that won't stay buried. And somewhere, under rusted tracks and rain-soaked streets, The truth runs on, humming like an old train that never came, promising it always will.